everyone, welcome back to Franchi Talks Asian Arts. I'm Franchi, this is Pikachu, and we're back with a new video. So today's video is about my latest obsession, or one of my latest obsessions. There are many, but this one in particular is sumo. I started watching sumo wrestling about the beginning of last year, around January, like the January tournament, and I was hooked. So since then I watched the tournaments that took place, and little by little I did my best to learn more about this sport and tradition. And as a surprise to absolutely no one, my favorite aspect about this tradition is how dense with traditional objects it is. Indeed, it's material culture. And so I was inspired to make a video about this topic. Of course, this is a huge topic. The traditional objects in sumo are countless, so I had to narrow it down to some more specific themes. So today we're gonna look at the wrestlers' attire, the referees' attire, and some of the objects which are featured during ceremonies during the tournaments. While looking at these traditional objects, we will also be looking at pictures of sumo-e. These are woodblock prints dated to the Edo period, which feature scenes of sumo, so sumo wrestlers, sumo matches, and so on. The sumo-e that we will be looking at today are by Utagawa Kunisada, an artist who produced a variety of sumo-e. Before we start, I just want to drop a reminder here that if you enjoy the video, you find it useful, or like you learned something, consider supporting the channel, for example by simply clicking like or subscribing to the channel, or sharing the video with a friend that you know is into this kind of thing, or even you can go on my Ko-fi, the link is in the description, and send me a little tip. But for now, enough with the talking, and let's jump right in. So I think that everyone has a kind of idea about what sumo is, at least a vague image in their mind, but let's talk a lot about it a little bit, like a brief introduction, so we all have some shared knowledge that we can work with. Let's start with the history. Sumo actually started in the ancient times. The first record of a sumo match actually is dated to the 7th century CE. So it's an ancient tradition, and the matches actually started as a way to pray to gods during agricultural festivals, in a way an entertainment for the gods, which also worked as a way to ask for a good harvest. And then, since these ancient times, sumo evolved. It was adopted by the samurai, so it became closely linked to this social class, and later it became more of an entertainment for the masses. Sumo as we know it today, it's kind of more similar to the sumo of the Edo period, so from the 17th to the 19th centuries, but it was a proper entertainment for the population at large. Let's also briefly talk about how sumo works. A sumo match features two wrestlers who are called rikishi, and they fight inside a clay ring called a dohyō. A sumo match finishes when one of the fighters, the loser, steps outside the ring or touches the clay outside the ring with any body part, including feet, or if they are still inside the ring, if the loser touches the clay, the floor, with any body part that is not the soles of their feet. So of course the aim is to make this happen. It's pretty easy, right? The first object that I want to look at today is perhaps the most iconic, the one that comes in everybody's mind when we think of sumo, and it's what the wrestlers wear. It's an iconic garment, it's called mawashi, and basically it consists in a long rectangular piece of textile that is wrapped around the wrestler's body very tightly and then fastened at the back in a knot. The name comes from the word mawaru, a verb which means to go around. The mawashi are 9 meters long and 60 centimeters wide, and they're made by hand traditionally by weavers who make them using a loom, and it can take them 2 weeks to finish producing one. So they are beautiful and valuable garments. Sumo wrestlers are actually strictly ranked and divided into divisions. The wrestlers of the top divisions can wear mawashi made of silk rather than, for example, cotton, and they can be brightly colored. Actually, I attach a lot of the times the color of the mawashi to the wrestler, and I'm often surprised by what beautiful and surprising color choices they go with. For example, Ura's iconic cherry blossom pink mawashi, or Koto Shoho's light blue mawashi, which I find very beautiful. Sumo wrestlers already wore mawashi during the Edo period. So let's look at a woodblock print from this era which features sumo wrestlers, and let's look at their mawashi. The woodblock print depicts two famous kishi, Shiranui and Kimenzan. And we can see that they're featured at the center of the ring, accompanied by a judge and a referee, and they're wearing, of course, a mawashi. You can have a good look at how it's worn and how it's tied at the back. We can also notice that Shiranui is actually grabbing Kimenzan's mawashi, and this is because the mawashi can also be used during a match. It is allowed to grab them, and they can help a wrestler in controlling their opponents or in pushing him down. One of the most fun moves for me is to see the current yokozuna Teruno Fuji grab his opponent's mawashi and just lifting them off the floor and carry them all the way to the limit of the ring and dumping them outside. Kunisada has a good production of Sumo-e, so all kind of pictures which feature sumo, so sumo matches, sumo wrestlers, everything sumo. And his style is actually goes very well with this theme, because he is able to convey the fierceness and the strength of the wrestlers. For example, in the case of our print that we're looking at right now, we can see that he's used a kind of thick black line to depict the wrestlers' bodies and their musculature, so we can see how powerful they are. And we can also look at their faces. I think they're represented beautifully because they have a fierce, intense look in their eyes. While looking at the woodblock print that we just saw, or perhaps if you've ever watched a sumo match, you may have noticed kind of fronds that hang from the mawashi. These are called sagari, and sagari actually means just hanging down. These are made from the same material and the same color of the mawashi. They're also made by a weaver using a loom. However, they are then stiffened with glue. Let's look at another woodblock print by Kunisada. This time he depicts the wrestlers Koyanagi and Arauma. They're also accompanied by a referee and a judge. And the two wrestlers are represented in the ring. They're squatting. It's moments before the match. And we can see they're wearing their mawashi with sagari. In this woodblock print as well, Kunisada uses kind of thick black lines to outline their bodies and their musculature, and the scene is very tense. We can tell it not only by the tension in their bodies, even though they're not moving yet, but also by their faces. In fact, their eyes are locked into each other's, and the tension is rising just before the match. As we mentioned, they're squatting down, they're wearing their mawashi with the sagari, and we can see that they can squat easily. The sagari does not get in the way. However, if you've ever watched sumo, you may have noticed that in other cases sagari really does get in the way. In fact, it's not rare for the sagari to detach from the mawashi and to fall on the floor, to fall on the ground. And when it happens, usually referees are very fast to grab it and throw it outside the ring, because it can happen that if it's left down there, wrestlers may step on it. So I think it's very natural when we see this to ask, but why do they wear it? The sagari are actually worn as for a kind of symbolical reasons. In fact, they work as an alternative, as a symbol for another garment that the sumo wrestlers used to wear in the past, and this was the keshomawashi apron. Keshomawashi apron are much bigger, they go down all the way to their feet, and they got in the way much more during a match, and so the wrestlers stopped wearing them when fighting, and instead they wear sagari as a kind of simplified apron. The keshomawashi aprons are not used anymore when fighting these days, but they are worn during ceremonies, and they consist of one big piece of silk, which is then decorated with a thick embroidery. In fact, keshomawashi apron means a decorated apron or a decorated mawashi. The thick embroidered designs are made, of course, by hand, by artisans. They're incredibly beautiful, and they can represent a variety of motifs. In the past, it was possible for sumo wrestlers to be sponsored by daimyo, feudal lords, and so they would, on their apron, they would feature the mon, the symbol of a samurai family, the one that sponsored them. These days, keshomawashi are also sometimes sponsored or gifted, for example by fan clubs or by companies, organizations, and the designs on the apron can be either to the taste and preference of the wrestler, but sometimes it can also be, for example, related to his story, to his country of origin, or it can be an advertisement for the company or institution that sponsored them. The keshomawashi also have a fringe at the hem, and this can be silver, gold or purple, but the color of purple can only be worn by the top divisions, as it is the color of royalty. Let's look at this woodblock print by Kunisada, which depicts the rikishi Araguma Koroji. The wrestler is depicted alone in the middle of the ring. He is not fighting in this case, he is just standing, and he is wearing a keshomawashi apron. We can see that Kunisada uses this kind of same black lines to depict his body, but in this case it's not as tense, it's not as muscular. In fact, he's in a relaxed state. If we look at his face, he's actually almost smiling. We can look at his apron. It's red with a golden fringe, and it features two black characters on it. Can you guess what they say? The two characters stand for Araguma, his name, which translates as wild bear. Of course, wild bear was not his real name, but it was his sumo name. In fact, since the Edo period, every wrestler has to adopt a kind of fighting name. And in this case, with the name Araguma, wild bear, we can only imagine what his fighting style would have been like. Today, the keshomawashi we mentioned are worn during ceremonies. There is one ceremony, especially in which it is worn, and it's the dohyō-iri, the ring entering ceremony. This ceremony takes place before the bouts of the top divisions, and sees all the wrestlers of the top divisions entering the ring wearing their keshomawashi. This ceremony actually started as a way to offer prayers to the Shinto deities, because we mentioned at the beginning of the video, sumo and the religion of Shinto are actually strongly connected. During the ceremony, The wrestlers all line up around the ring, then they turn inwards to face the referee, and then they perform a short ritual which includes clapping their hands, raising their aprons, and raising their hands to show that they're holding no weapon, so they will fight a clean fight. We can see the ring entering ceremony depicted in a woodblock print by Kunisada. And the first thing we need to notice is that it's a triptych of woodblock prints, so it's actually 3 sheets, and it represents a huge scene. We can see a line of rikishi that goes horizontally from the left sheet to the right sheet, and we can see all these wrestlers queuing up and then entering the ring in the middle and then leaving on the right. They are all depicted individually. Each of them is wearing the keshomawashi, as we just mentioned, and they have unique designs. And not only the keshomawashi is unique, but we can see that the artist actually took care to represent each wrestler individually with individual features. It's actually an exciting moment for the viewers because they get to see all their favorite wrestlers all together in the ring. And we can actually see the excitement in the crowd. Also, it's because it's the ceremony which is performed before the beginning of the matches of the top division, so it's gonna be the best matches, the most exciting one. And you can see that the crowd is wild and the artist really took care to focus on the crowd to depict their reactions, their actions. It's a big crowd and it's really fun to try and look at these little details. The keshomawashi is also worn during the ring entering ceremony of the yokozuna. The yokozuna are wrestlers who bear this title of Grand Champion. It's the highest rank in sumo, and they perform a separate ring entering ceremony. During the ceremony, the yokozuna perform a choreography which is very beautiful. It's a beautiful moment to watch. They wear a keshomawashi and they also wear one additional garment. It's a rope called the tsuna. This is a very heavy rope, about 15 kilograms, and it's worn tied around the waist. It's actually made by the wrestlers. It takes them 1 hour to make, and they all create the rope together with their strength. We can see that there are some kind of zigzag paper strips hanging from the tsuna. These are called shide. And actually, you may have noticed that the tsuna is kind of similar to the ropes that are hanging in Shinto sanctuaries called shimenawa. They have a kind of similar aesthetic, and this is in fact because the tsuna is also a holy object for Shinto. In fact, it is believed that deities dwell in the tsuna. The yokozuna does not get alone in the ring when he is performing his ceremony, but he is actually accompanied by 2 other wrestlers. These are considered in this moment ceremonial guards, and they have 2 titles. One is the tachi-mochi, the sword bearer, whose role is literally to carry a sword. And the other one is a tsuyu-arai. This means the dew sweeper, and he is the person who is at the front. He walks first to the ring and he makes sure that the way is clear. During the ceremony, while the yokozuna performs his choreography, the 2 ceremonial guards squat down and they don't move at all in a show of respect. It's actually pretty hard, I imagine. The yokozuna and the 2 ceremonial guards all wear a keshomawashi. The keshomawashi is not the same for the 3 of them. The one for the yokozuna and the one for the 2 guards have slight differences, but actually they are usually coordinated. They are made as a set and they're only worn during this ceremony. You may wonder why is a sword present in the ring. This is because, as we mentioned before, there are ties between the world of sumo and the world of samurai. And in the past, feudal lords, daimyo, could have sumo wrestlers as their retainers, and so the wrestlers were allowed to wear a sword, and so they carried them to the ring during the ceremony as a kind of symbol of their special status. We can see a yokozuna ring entrance ceremony being performed by the yokozuna Hidenoyama Raigoro, and he is of course accompanied by two wrestlers, Tachibana Tomigoro as in the role of Tsuyu-arai and Akitsukaze Kumoemon as the Tachimochi. The yokozuna is performing the ceremony is actually called mid-movement. It looks as if he is kind of raising his apron with the left arm. He is wearing the tsuna robe and a keshomawashi apron which is purple, and it also has a purple fringe. As we mentioned, this was a special color and it was reserved to this rank. The keshomawashi of the yokozuna features a design of two interlocked squares, and actually the same design is found on the keshomawashi of the two ceremonial guards. However, the keshomawashi is red. If we look at the ceremonial guards, we can also see that the sword bearer on the right holds a beautiful long sword which is fitted in a white scabbard with golden fittings. In all of the prints that we have seen today, the wrestlers were not alone in the ring, but they were always accompanied by another figure. This was the referee. And every time I watch sumo, I feel like referees may be the most beautifully dressed men in the world, so I think we should dedicate a little bit of our video to them. The referees are called gyōji, and of course their role is to supervise the matches and of course to declare the winners. The referees are ranked just as strictly as the wrestlers, and depending on their rank they can supervise the matches of wrestlers of different divisions, and upon the rank it also depends what they can wear. So today I want to look at the referee's attire, but for sake of simplicity we're just gonna focus on the referees who are in the top rank, the chief referees, who are called tate gyōji. The clothing worn by the referee is actually said to be based on the clothing that was worn by the samurai during the 15th century. They wear mostly very colorful silk robes, and oh my god, their designs and colors are so beautiful that if you're ever wondering about what a perfect color combination might be, just look for pictures of them. But aside from this, their robes are decorated by rosettes called kikutoji and tassels called fusa. The colors of the kikutoji and the fusa depends upon the rank. In the case of tate gyōji, they are purple, of course. The referees also wear a hat called eboshi. This hat was worn since the ancient times at court by men who had a special social status, and it's a black lacquered hat. Now if you look closely at the referees of this rank, you can notice that they're actually wearing a short sword, a tanto. It's usually at their waist, and this is a very symbolical object of a great importance because it symbolizes how seriously referees take their work. In fact, the tanto symbolizes that they're ready to kill themselves were they to make a wrong decision about the winner of a match. Now don't worry, it doesn't actually happen. Most times if a referee happens to do a mistake, he will write a letter of apology and a letter of resignation, although usually they can continue working. The also most symbolical object that is held by a referee is the gunbai, the fan. This is a military fan that was used traditionally by samurai officers to communicate orders to their soldiers. Contrary to what we think of a fan, these fans don't fold and they're actually solid. They're made of wood or metal. And referees use the fan to indicate the side of the winner. In fact, each wrestler is assigned a side of the ring, and when they win, the side of the ring of the winner is indicated. And the gunbai is so symbolical of the referee and the referee's decision that actually is the name gunbai is also used to indicate the referee. So most woodblock prints we looked at featured referees. I selected this one to have a look at, and this woodblock print depicts the sumo wrestlers Koyanagi and Takaneyama. The referee is depicted on the right. In this case we can see that he's not wearing exactly the clothes that we have talked about. In fact, he's not wearing a hat, but still he is holding the gunbai and he is wearing a sword, so we can recognize him easily as the referee. Just notice how concentrated his face is. In fact, we talk about how seriously referees take their work, and he is looking very closely at the wrestlers, make sure that the match is going according to the rules. We can see that the referee's pose is also very dynamic. In fact, if you watch a sumo match, you'll notice that the referees barely stand still. They are always moving. In fact, they're trying to always face the sumo wrestlers so that they can observe every move, and also they're constantly moving so they don't get in the way of the wrestlers. I think it's a very intense job. If we look on the left, there is a judge. These are not referees, they're judges. They still sit around the sumo ring today, and they make sure that the referee is making the right decisions. And we can see that he is also looking very seriously at the match. And then of course, if we look at these two sumo wrestlers, they have some fierce looks going on. So it's a very intense atmosphere. What I think is great about the woodblock prints by Kunisada is that he manages to convey all these different aspects of sumo. So for example, the fierceness of the matches, the serious attitude towards things such as choosing the winner, but also the attitude towards these traditions that carry such religious meanings. But at the same time, he also depicts the crazy fun that spectators can have during a sumo match. So this is why it's so great to look at the woodblock prints, because really not much has changed since the Edo period. Watching a tournament today is pretty much the same feelings. So with this thought, I'd like to conclude this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a good time, and if you watch sumo, let me know who your favorite wrestler is. And if you don't, I hope that you got a little bit curious about this world now, and it's never too late to start watching. As always, I'd be very happy if you left a like or a comment. Feel free to always leave questions, and feel free to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos. And of course, you can consider supporting the channel through Ko-fi. You can leave me a little tip. The link is in the description. But for now, just thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!